Yeah, especially again, I don't know why I'm picking on lithops, but it just seems really, really common because it doesn't appear it is the fact is that most of the people commenting on these posts don't own any lithops themselves, and they have just read something somewhere or seen something somewhere, and they've never actually cared for the plant themselves, and yet they come in and say, no, this is this is how you take care of this plant. And I don't think that's really fair. So to suss out how you determine this, because a lot of times they look the same on the outside. Now, sometimes they don't. Blanket statements are a great warning. But for example, if you posted a picture of a plant like a lithop that was shriveled, for example, and you said, okay, well, what's wrong with my lithop? Does it have not enough water or too much? Because that seems like a really, really common theme, because we're all forever wondering if they're thirsty or not, right? Because we don't want to kill them. And so people will comment, it needs a drink, or no, it doesn't need a drink. No, it's gonna rot. You don't need to water it. And if someone says it only needs to be watered 4 times a year, then you know, okay, just kind of scroll by. But if someone just says it needs another drink or something like that, how do you know if that's good advice or if that's bad advice, if they don't give you a lot of context? And the only way that I know, and the best way that I know, is to ask questions. And I have 5 questions that work really well for sussing out who knows what. And the first one is something, it doesn't have to be this exactly, but something along the lines of, so how long have you been growing whatever plant it is? So if the advice is on lithops, and you don't have to be snarky, someone says it's overwatered and you're like, I'm positive this is underwatered like 99%. I just was asking because I'm a little bit unsure or something. Say thank you so much, for your thoughts, that it's overwatered. How long have you been raising lithops for? I'm still learning, and most people respond pretty well to that. It's not a threatening. You're not trying to threaten them. You're just trying to get information. And if they come back with nothing, then go to someone else. And if they come back with, well, I don't own any, but my friend does, my mom does, I read, okay, then you can take it, and it may be accurate. What they read may in fact be accurate, but you take it with a grain of salt, knowing that it's not actual experience. The second question is similar, and again, some version of this doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but if they give an advice like, for mealybugs, say, do this, coming back with the question, so that works well for you? And that will suss out a lot of times whether someone just read it online and they'll have to say, well, I actually haven't ever tried it. I haven't had mealybugs yet, but I read it. Okay, that's good. Again, sharing information that you haven't personally tried, if you have very good reason to believe it's accurate, can be just fine. But that then there's a little added credibility that comes when someone says, no, this has worked for me, especially if it's worked over an extended period of time. The third question is something like, so what methods have you found work best for, this problem? I'll use mealybugs again, for your mealybugs. And usually I use this when someone has countered someone else. So if someone commented, oh, that's thirsty, and then someone said, no, it's not. Well, that's not a good example. Mealybugs is a better example because we're on an issue. So if someone said, I use alcohol for mealybugs, and then someone else says, well, alcohol doesn't work at all. Then coming in and saying, oh, what methods have you found do work? What have you found works best? And putting it in a frame where they have to give details. So not, does alcohol work, where they can say yes, or something. What? Just leaving it open so that they have to fill in that information, which can really let you know if they're just Googling something, which again can be fine. I'm not, but I really think we need less. I was going to say I'm not slamming that, but I do think we need less people who are going, oh, you have a mealybug problem, and they Google it and then they just parrot advice. you know, we can Google ourselves. People can look up issues themselves. They're asking people in a plant group that they trust because they're wanting actual personal, yes, this worked for me. I've tried that. I didn't try this. You know, that one didn't work. I know they say it does, or whatever. You know, we're looking for real interaction with people that have experience with it. And so I hope that the parroting of information will go down a little bit. And just repeating Google answers, you know, basically will hopefully dwindle, but it will only dwindle as we kind of call people out on it, and in a nice way, and just ask questions and show that what we're interested in is actually experience, not just being fed, you know, some other blogger who was then quoting some book that they read, who was then, you know, that kind of stuff. All right, question number 4 is a good question to kind of see if they actually have knowledge to back up what they're saying. And it's something along the lines of, so what are the signs of this versus this? So like with lithops, and someone says, is it overwatered or underwatered? And then you get all the replies. So if someone says it's overwatered, asking them, okay, what are the signs of overwatering versus underwatering? How do you tell the difference here? How did you tell the difference here? You know, was there something, you know, that you saw in the photograph that you were like, oh, this is what helps me know? And or, you know, what are the advantages of doing this versus this? You know, what are the advantages of using clay versus, you know, plastic pots? What are the advantages of using this versus this? So if they say this is what you should do, ask them, well, what are the advantages over these other things that other people are saying? And if they can't tell you what the advantages are, chances are they probably don't know. And what they're saying is the only thing that they do know, which is fine, you know, their experience. But it lets you know that that's, you know, that their experience is this tiny little piece up here, and that they haven't experienced these other things. They're not telling you this is the best choice out of these 8 options that I've tried. They're just telling you, well, this is the only thing I've tried and it worked for me. Which again can be totally fine, but those kind of questions are questions that require actual knowledge to answer. You can't just fake your way through a question like, what is the advantage of this versus this? Yeah, you can Google it, I guess, and if you wanted to put a lot of effort into looking like you knew something that you don't actually, but in general, it's a good way to suss out people. And the last question is a little more in your face. It's kind of more of a last resort question for me, and it's not really in your face, but it's just, can I ask why you said that? Or can you explain how you knew that? Which, like from a photo, if someone looks at it and says, no, your plant isn't etiolated, okay, how can you tell from the photo? And you can frame it in a way of trying to learn or whatever. And if they come back with a, well, you know, I could tell because the leaf spacing, you know, shows me that it's etiolating, because usually they're closer together and it's not, you know, or whatever. Great, you know, that's what we want. And that will let you know, okay, give you just a little bit of, I can trust, you know, I can trust this person a little bit at least. And that's all for the questions. This video has gone on way long. I'm already going to have to split it into 2 parts. As far as good advice, I guess I'll have to make another video on how to recognize good advice, but just quickly, the first thing I would say is it's specific. You know, people that talk about succulents as a general category, while I'm not totally discrediting that, you know, if you have succulent arrangements and stuff like that, there is some general care for them, especially as opposed to houseplants. But other than soil, that they generally prefer well-draining soil, there is huge differences in the succulent world. I mean, all the way from shade-loving, water-loving succulents to, you know, dry, almost never have a drop of water succulents. And so anyone that is, you know, broad advice, it doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. They may just be talking to a different audience, because for a lot of people it doesn't really matter the specific details. They just kind of want a general idea of what to do with their babies. They're not trying to specifically grow each of them to be as happy and healthy as they can be. But in general, specific is a really good indicator that the person knows what they're talking about, because they have enough information to be able to give you specifics, right? And the second thing, the last thing, I'll cut it off after this. The last thing is that they're not threatened by questions ever. And because why would you be? Either you know the answer or you don't. And if you actually have knowledge, the people that have knowledge aren't afraid to say when they don't, because they have knowledge on what they have knowledge on, and they no one can be an expert on everything. And so that's not a downfall. But if you ask a question and someone gets threatened, well, I have a lot of succulents, and because that's a big red flag, because there's no reason to be flustered over a question. It's just a question, and if we don't have enough information to answer the questions, then maybe we shouldn't be giving advice in the first place. Alrighty, I am going to wrap this up for now. I hope this was helpful for someone. I know I have just seen so many people pulling their hair out because they're really trying to get advice on what's wrong with a plant or what the name of a plant is. Oh, good gracious me. And people bust in with names that are so far, they're not even closely, they don't even look alike. And the name gets repeated over and over, people agreeing, and if you just went by majority rule, you'd go with that. And I don't understand how, again, why people comment unless you're absolutely certain, or else you say, I'm not sure, maybe, whatever, question mark. But there's a lot of frustration about it online, and a lot of questions about, but how do you know? Like, who am I supposed to ask then? And so I hope that's some good, helpful tips for recognizing bad advice, and then questions to ask to kind of poke at someone to see if there's actually knowledge behind what they're saying, or if what they're saying is just being repeated or regurgitated information from someone else, which can be totally fine as long as that source is reliable. But I like to know that, if you're quoting someone else and talking about their experience, that's fine. But I need to know that it's not actually yours, which I'm a little bit more, I don't know, anal about that kind of stuff, I guess, of, no, if you don't have experience, don't talk about it. But in general, I think it is a problem that is pretty well recognized that people are getting frustrated with. So I thought I would do this, and I hope it helps someone. I love you guys, and I hope you have a fantastic day, and happy growing.